On Press Perspective today, we touch upon the Korean way of keeping your home clean and tidy, as highlighted by the foreign media, and the story for wolf that ran away from the zoo. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome. It's Friday, April 17th here in Seoul, and you're watching Press Perspective. It's time for our weekly talk on the social stories here that have been making international headlines. And today we start with the art of cleaning, if you will. For more on this, I have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, welcome back.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, it's good to have you here.
Always good to be here, thank you.
Chloe, we start with you. So what is meant by Korean style cleaning, and why has it been going viral online?
So yeah, this has been these terms have been highlighted by the Daily Mail, which has been making an article saying that there was this interesting cleaning tech actually in South Korea that they dubbed the Korean cleaning. So it's mostly on social media that you'll see it, with people making videos to show the kind of daily life and showing all of the techs that they have to clean stuff. So the writer in this article was wowed by a few different things. She was speaking about rubbish bins that automatically seal the trash bag for you. Easy, so that and stay clean when you have to drop them downstairs. Also UV sterilizer. So she was speaking about a knife and cutting plaques sterilizer. I know there's also some for a toothbrush, for example. That is probably something that I've seen more than the knife one. And then she was mostly impressed by a shoe cabinet that eradicates bacteria and unpleasant smell. So you just put your shoes in when you're getting home, because you have to take your shoes down out before, and then you will just close the cabinet and it will kind of clean and deodorize your shoes by itself. So it's kind of interesting tech. So that's what she said was called a smart living. So kind of giving away all the very tedious tasks to something else doing it for you. So I know that it's been also quite a lot in Europe, for example, the vacuum robots that are just no mapping of your apartment, and they'll just go cleaning by themselves, even mopping the floor, so that you have nothing to do to keep your floor clean, which is, I mean, a very good thing when you have to vacuum by yourself. You'll be happy to get those kind of robots. And the thing is it properly Korean? That's the question. I mean, I remember seeing it quite a lot before as well, those kind of very short videos that go very viral on social medias, where someone will just kind of make a scenario of a cleaning task, and they'll just show you all the gadgets that they have. I would say what's typically Korean there is mostly the fact that it's very technological stuff. It's not just, I've got 10 different types of mops. It's mostly like, I have a robot making it for me, or I have something like, you know, the kind of, it's not, the first time I saw it, I thought it was a fridge, but actually, no, you know, the valet stuff where you can put your clothes in and it'll just dry it for you. Yeah, well, the first time I visited an apartment and office actually, and they were showing it to me, I was just like, why do you have multiple fridge and one is in the entrance? And then she explained to me, I was like, all right, that's really non-existent in France. So this is the kind of thing that I would say can be dubbed like the K-cleaning and K-technology that's used for the cleaning and keeping your house proper and tidy.
Right, K-cleaning based on K-gadgets then, to keep your home neat and tidy. Colin, do you agree that Korea is one of the cleanest countries across the world? And if that is the case, how do you care to explain this acknowledgement?
It feels more clean whenever I leave Korea and go to, back to the US, for example, and make some comparisons, especially big city to big city. But when we talk about the cleanliness of a society, we should probably split this into two questions. One of them being the cleanliness of the public sphere, and one the cleanliness of the domestic sphere, so sort of the streets and the home. And those can be very different depending on the societies you're in. I mean, I've read that in Indian cities, for example, people are immaculate with the cleaning of their homes, but sometimes will throw garbage directly into the hallway of their apartment building. That doesn't happen here. But let's think about this. In homes, there is, of course, the custom widespread in Asia of removing your shoes before entry. And in the US, I think that's catching on little by little. It still remains a matter of controversy. That helps. Many people have a sort of intensive cleaning regime at home or think they should have one, so there can be some anxiety about whether your home is really clean enough, and products are sold that cater to that. And I do find, you know, if you're a Westerner here, you live enough time in Korea, you do get the sense, or you start to feel like people are obsessed with dust. You hear the word monji, which means dust. I've heard it more in 10 years here than I have in the previous 30 I lived in the US. It almost makes me think, is there some animistic belief about monji, about dust? But I think maybe it's rooted in the sort of 80s and 90s, when, as I understand it, you couldn't go outside without being covered in construction dust. And then more recently, the fine dust, the misemonji, for which people blame China, rightly or wrongly. So there's no smoke without fire, as it were, in that sense. But people do tend to keep very clean homes, even if they're full of junk, sometimes I find. As far as the public sphere in Seoul particularly, I think it impresses foreigners, especially Westerners, and especially in public conveniences, shall we say. The subway looks immaculate to really anybody from almost any other country, and especially the subway system bathrooms, which is something that you can't even conceptually imagine having in the US, let alone in a state you would actually want to use. I tell that to Koreans and they'll say, yeah, I guess that's nice, but first of all, if you're in New York, where do you go if you have a sort of emergency? You know, what do you mean you have no bathrooms in the subway? That's a whole other question, but they will often say, yes, but in decades past, before the World Cup, before the Olympics, public bathrooms were awful. Okay, fair enough, somewhat irrelevant, but they always point that out, which tells you there has been a sort of evolutionary process in public cleanliness. Expectations have risen, you could say, in Korea. And so you can look very far back, you know, travel logs from the 19th century. Isabella Bird Bishop, in her travels in 1890-something, is always writing about how dirty every accommodation is, just horrific sounding oftentimes. She loved Korea, but she would always point out just how dirty a place it could be. And that's not true anymore. Now, she was from England, but an Englishman, an American, whoever comes here is usually very impressed by the overall cleanliness of Korea. Well, they do point out that there is a bit, sometimes the garbage in the street or sort of junk piled up can be a bit much compared to certain other countries, but compared to where they came from, usually it gets passing marks, certainly.
Right, and speaking about public places, Chloe, beyond homes, of course, in public places, over in Brazil, efforts apparently to ensure that streets are clean and safe. These efforts are said to have taken into account South Korea's streets, among other streets across the world, of course. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, so this is a local Sao Paulo newspaper was speaking about the fact that there is a neighborhood in Sao Paulo that's called the Bom Retiro neighborhood that's actually considered as the Korean cultural neighborhood, and they are getting the help actually from the consulate of South Korea in Sao Paulo to be able to get a good system to try to raise the community feeling, to kind of get also the place to be more clean, the streets, and to decrease the criminality. So what's been done actually from the Korean model, what they have offered as a advice was two things. First of all is what they call the broken window theory. So that's been developed in the United States in the 1980s. And the idea is that if you let signs of discrepancy, so for example, broken windows, graffitis on the streets, and if you left them like this without cleaning them, after a while, it tends to favor increased crime and also a feeling of insecurity in the community. So everything kind of being linked together. And the other thing is they are taking the same model as the Semail movement, sorry. So it's something that was done here in Korea, local development actually in the 1970s. The government realized that the rural area were not growing up as fast as the city. So what they decided to do was to give some money to kind of help two things, make more community, so make sure that people will be getting together as a village, and also develop collaborative work. So that's what they want to do now in Sao Paulo. It's the kind of model that they want to work with. And there's been some first steps that have already been implemented with some success apparently. So they've been doing something that will be our store or cleanliness. So they are asking people, so the store owners and also residents, to kind of clean in front of their place. So, it's something that happens in quite a lot of countries, being like the pavement in front of your doorsteps are supposed to be yours to take care of. So I know that, for example, in France, it's you have to take away the grass that's growing there when it's not supposed to be there, or when there is snow, you just have to shovel them off. And the idea will be cleaning in front of your place, and if everyone is doing it, then the whole neighborhood will feel cleaner. And they were also saying that there is something that they called the Pomerotiro Cleaning Up Day. So what they're doing is every Friday at 10:30 a.m. they team up, so with the Korean consulate, Sao Paulo City Hall, some organization as well, and they're going together to clean up the neighborhood, to try to give this more feeling of community and of security as well, coming from the cleanliness of the streets. So that's interesting organization that's been put in place with apparently some success.
Right, so you're taking a walk around the neighborhood and then picking up garbage during that walk.
Exactly.
Colin, do you suppose the culture of cleanliness it's cultivated over time? I mean, is this concept of collective responsibility for community a universal concept? Or?
I think so. As I say, you can trace this sort of progress from these old travel logs still up through the Olympics till now. You get a sense that cleanliness in Korea specifically has been increasing, public and private. And Korea as well is a country that shows you how fast a society can change in any respect, but this is one of the positive changes. I would say nobody disapproves of how much cleaner everything has become in recent decades or over the past century or so. I recall now hearing older foreigners here, older Westerners, tell me they'd have these expat gatherings in the 90s. They'd watch the movie Trainspotting, and those who have seen it will recall there's a scene about the worst toilet in Scotland. That would always be accompanied by a cry from the expat viewers, the best toilet in Korea, which tells you right now what they thought of the public accommodations at that time. Now nobody would say that. Now, you know, it's compared to most countries, this is where using a public restroom is not a bad thing. And as well, I mean, we can see this borne out in numbers to an extent. The company Dyson, the vacuum manufacturer, the English vacuum manufacturer, of which I was aware when I lived in the US, but I'm certainly more aware of it now that I live in Korea. This is a strong market for them, and they know it. And they've focused their efforts here, including by conducting a survey of their major markets, be it in America, Europe, Asia, a bunch of different countries. And Korea ranked #1 in how frequently they clean, how frequently Koreans clean house. And so I think Dyson has only redoubled their efforts. And when they put out a new vacuum cleaner a couple of years ago, there was one that uses water, like it has a water tank, so it cleans with both a conventional way, but also using water. That made the news here. So I think there's a real ready market for Dyson or any other company making cleaning devices, as Chloe discussed at the beginning. And that survey does not surprise me. The results don't surprise me. I think however much people do clean versus how much they think they should clean, they're probably doing it more in Korea on average compared to other developed countries.
Right. Chloe, let's now move on to another story here in South Korea that has received quite a bit of foreign media attention as well. I'm speaking, of course, about the wolf that ran away from the zoo before being caught safe and sound just early this morning. Tell us more about why has Neukgu been receiving so much attention?
Yeah, so Neukgu is a 2-year-old wolf that escaped 9 days ago. So he had kind of a bit of an adventure, actually. So he was in Daejeon City. He escaped. He was part of the zoo. He kind of dig up under his enclosure and he was able to run away. And so it was kind of hard to find him. So the search has been involving drones, police officers, military as well. And it was spotted quite a few times. We've seen quite a few videos of people in Daejeon filming it and calling at the same time, the police being like, I'm seeing him, he's there. And by the time officials arrived, the wolf would have escaped again. I mean, it's kind of in nature to be elusive animal, so it was hard to get him. The way he was caught last time was like they got a tip around 5:30 p.m. yesterday that the wolf was seen next to a park, and he was captured live in the night at 12:45 a.m. Near an interchange. So that could have been also a bit of a dangerous place, but fortunately they were able to tranquilize it with the gun, like, you know, the sleeping things, and they were able to get him back into the zoo safe and sound. So there was still, I mean, it was mostly kind of interesting things to see. I thought that there was even a meme Bitcoin that was made about him. There was a Twitter account, so quite a lot of things. There was also a bit of concerns, obviously. So the nearby elementary school was closed when the wolf escaped, so the one that was close to the zoo. And even the president, Lee Jae-myung, on social media put a message saying that he hoped that there will be no human casualties, and also pray that Neukgu was able to return home safely. So that was what happened, thankfully, because that was kind of what was getting people a bit stressed about, is how they would be able to get him and to capture him again.
Right, indeed. Our furry fugitive, he's called Neukgu. I'd like to correct myself. I believe I called him Neukdu earlier. So how do you explain, Colin, the public interest here in Neukgu's fate?
Yes, as suggested by Chloe's answer, this was a very social media suited event, you could say. People were getting their own footage, or if you could snap a photo or get a video of Neukgu, if you spotted this wolf on the loose, that would get you a lot of attention, and anybody could participate, but you could also follow it. You know, you'd always see scrolling your feed, if there had been a sighting, you could just be following the story in real time, this wolf hunt. So there's something exciting about that, and people are, as you can see if you ride the Seoul subway, pretty well connected at all times to their social media feeds. So it was followable, and that's the modern aspect. But also, I couldn't help but think this has something in common with these old stories of a tiger coming down from the mountain and coming up to the edge of society, and the whole community has to mobilize to stop the tiger from attacking. And this is also fairly common, this kind of thing, in modern historical dramas too. So the wild animal entering the village, that's really a Korean form of story. So whenever a real life event aligns with something, with a drama type storyline, or even a folktale, even the outlines of a folktale, it gets attention. And that's another aspect as well. But I mean, we can't avoid pointing out that this is the third time it's less than 10 years, maybe the third time in 8 years there's been a zoo animal escape. There was a puma in 2018, I believe, and then a zebra, even more eye-catchingly, in 2023. So at this point, I think the Korean public is prepared for this. And you have other incidents like the wild boars of Jeju that tear up restaurants occasionally. So this is almost a genre of public spectacle that people are prepared to consume, in a sense. And apart from those wild boars, I mean, these are pretty safe. They're pretty safe on the whole. I mean, a loose wolf doesn't sound safe, but it is a zoo animal. And just how small Neukgu looked really struck me. You think of a wolf as being huge. Maybe it's just from movies and old stories I think this, but this was the size of Neukgu was the size of a domestic dog, it seemed like. So it doesn't really seem like a threat, probably more dangerous than he looks. But at the same time, I think this is the spectacle of danger without quite as much as you might imagine.
Right. Chloe, what can you tell us about similar incidents overseas with regard to animals that escaped the zoo, and how did authorities there handle those cases?
Yeah, so that's obviously not that frequent, but even so, in the recent years, I've been finding a few examples. So, for example, in 2022, in a zoo in Sweden, you have chimpanzees who escaped. So what happened is they escaped their enclosure, but not the complete, spot of the other monkeys. So there was 3 of them that were shot dead. What the zoo explained, because obviously people were kind of a bit saddened by this execution of the animals, what they explained is that they were at risk of harming people, and the problem is that tranquilizer shots take a few minutes, sometimes more than 10 minutes, to really get into the system and get them to sleep. Also, you need to be very close to the animal to be able to shot the dart in the right place. So what they were saying is that at the time they decided to shoot some of them because they were risk for human lives. The other ones were not shot, and they were just left inside the bigger enclosures until they were able to be retrieved and put back into their own space. It took quite a lot of time, because what they were saying is that chimpanzees are kind of fearless and they just want to run away, explore, so they were not able to lure them back very easily. Then there was another case in 2021 in Germany. So a lynx escaped, but that was just he didn't go very far. He didn't leave the zoo, actually. He went from his enclosure to the next door enclosure. That was the antelope. And he killed a few of them. So he was hunting, actually. But he did not live anywhere further. So they were able to shoot him and try to put him back into his enclosure. But unfortunately, as it does happen sometimes with anesthesia for those kind of animals, he died before waking up. So that was another sad story. And it's kind of something that's also been happening in France in 2021, actually, also. That gets people a bit angry is when those animals have to be killed because they escaped. So there is a French zoo that was under scrutiny for quite a few escapes. They have got antelopes that escaped. They also had some other animals. And so in 2021, they had to definitely close because 9 wolves escaped from their enclosure. 4 of them were shot. The other one they were able to retrieve them. And this year in January, they also made again the headlines because even though the zoo is closed, they still have a lot of animals that are still there and taken care of, obviously, but they have a hard time getting them to other places because obviously the law makes it harder. You cannot just give them away to anybody. So there's still some animal on site, and 2 monkeys apparently escaped. And some people think that at the same time, a YouTuber was kind of getting into the site to show how easy it is to get into this zoo. So there's an old story about it. So that was another one of the harder time. And I was speaking about how elusive a wolf can be, but you can imagine that catching a monkey is also a hard thing. So they've been like kind of having a fun time in the village next door for quite some time before they were able to get them. And then to finish up with a more light-hearted story, June last year, 2 bears escaped from their enclosure in England, but they just went to the food store stash and they got into the honey stash, obviously, and they ate for the equivalent of 1 week's consumption. So, you know, a very nice, enjoyable dinner for them. And then the zoo was closed, obviously, to make sure that nothing could happen, and police was mobilized, but actually one of the bears went back by himself to his enclosure after having his share of honey, and the other one was lured back using food. So, I mean, probably still had a bit of space in his stomach for more. So this story was one of the easy, nice one, and it's funny to see the people who are taking care of them, the caretakers, say that they actually did not destroy anything because they have a very good, strong smell, sense of smell. So they just went straight to the honey
to
get only the honey. So
they were only interested in dining out then.
The big stereotype.
Charming story, charming story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chloe. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for that, Chloe.
Thank you.
And Colin, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you, Sunny.
Right, that ends Press Perspective for this week. Have a great weekend. Thank you for watching.